just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast with your host Ian Dawson-Mackay. Today's guest is Jack Donovan. So I'm going to read from Jack's About page because I found it truly epic. Jack Donovan is the author of The Way of the Men, a straightforward, politically incorrect theory of masculinity that has become an underground hit around the world. Donovan has been blogging, writing and speaking about masculinity and tribalism for over a decade. He lives in the Pacific Northwest, where he leads a chapter of the infamous Wolves of Vinland, an esoteric tribe of Germanic pagans. I don't know if I need to say anything more as an intro for such a man. In this interview, we discuss masculinity, why masculinity isn't a dirty word, and why we should all undertake our own journey to become better men and in turn more masculine men. This interview was quite a surprise for me. I'd read a lot of Jack's material and I wasn't quite sure about it, but the more I investigated him and researched him and spoke to him, I've really understood his message, and it was really eye-opening and inspiring, the message he's putting out. If you can get past the BS way that we look at masculinity in today's society, I think you can take a lot from this and realise, like I did, that Jack's message is awesome and it's one that all men should have. But before we get into that, a quick word about our affiliates. I've managed to build up some great relationships with some awesome companies. These allow me to obtain special discount codes, deals and listener exclusives. So if you'd like to know more, please go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates for further information. All sales made through my affiliate links will be put back into the website, into the podcast and developing it. So all commissions will help me make this a better podcast for you. I am particularly loving the Gains box and its awesome fitness goodies, which is delivered straight to your door. Another is the OMG Yes website, which is a video series on how to truly pleasure a woman. And my Marble apparel jeans that feel so comfy, but they show off muscular gains in all the right places. Trust me. For these and so much more, simply go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and see the great deals. And now, let's get to the interview with Jack. I hope you enjoy this one as much as I did interviewing him. Well, thank you very much for agreeing to do this. So if we met in a bar or another sort of generic location and I asked you what you did and why you're so well known, what would you say?
Well, I guess I would say I usually tell people I'm an author. I write books for a living. And I think why I'm so successful is really because I say things that a lot of men think and don't say. I think I somehow am able to channel the way they see the world and articulate it in a way that they wish they would have said themselves.
So was there a point when you were growing up that made you want to go into masculinity? You know, was there a defining moment that, you know, maybe you felt you weren't as manly enough or that you weren't the man that you wanted to become? You know, can you remember that point, or was it a general interest?
Well, I was always really confident in whatever I was doing, whether it was masculine or not. But I would say that I was always interested in gender and the ideas that surround that, gender and sexuality and things like that. And then when I got to be about 30, I realized that a lot of things that I dismissed really as a younger man, I started to appreciate the importance of them. So I started to investigate really why people, talk so badly about masculinity, why people have such a strong reaction to it, and some of the positives that I think come from actually striving to be a better man. Kind of called to me, and I started to investigate it and realized that when it comes to the answering the question, what is masculinity, most people don't have a very good answer, and that's why I think they're very easily manipulated.
And it's certainly something we're seeing more and more in today's society. Would you look at masculinity, for example, as being dumbed down or neutralized in, TV, films, and that sort of thing?
I mean, not so much dumbed down, but yeah, I guess softened. I think more than anything. I mean, it's kind of made into a joke. Especially in television and movies and things like that. You always have the smart lady cop who's always better than all the other guy cops, no matter what. And then you have these 110-pound girls beating up guys in the street and all kinds of crazy things that you see in movies and television. You always have the know-it-all mom who just laughs at the husband who can't seem to figure anything out in life and somehow makes it along. But you see that a lot in the world, and I think what you see in mainstream society, well, I wouldn't say mainstream society so much as mainstream discourse, which I think is different when you talk about like the mainstream media and what opinions are acceptable and marketable. I think that you'll find a lot of people who will soften masculinity by saying, there are different kinds of masculinity and masculinity is evolving. And it's just a way to be overly inclusive, because when you're marketing things, you want to be overly inclusive and you don't want to make people feel bad, because you want them to make them feel good by and include them in what you're selling. And I think that's why all this inclusivity that you see in all throughout society is really more about marketing than I think it is about ideology.
So if you had to define masculinity in a few sentences, can you define it in a very specific way, or is it quite, is it just what makes us part of men?
I don't know. I've never been able to get it down to a few sentences, but I think in my book I bring it down to masculinity. What men perceive as being masculine in each other are the things that they needed from each other to survive throughout our evolutionary history. Things like strength and courage and competence. I mean, those are the things that men have always demanded from each other in a stressful situation. And I think that men still evaluate themselves by those kinds of things. And I think there's strong parameters for it that haven't changed, and they never change, because they're actually biologically part of who we are. When you talk about strength, men are stronger than women on average. That is part of masculinity at its most extreme point. Mm-hmm. And the same thing is true of courage. Men are less risk averse and have been pushed to take risks more and more throughout evolutionary history, because they had to do the riskier jobs. And again, that's always been true. It's not suddenly not true because we're living in an age where we're very protected and we don't have to take any risks. It's still what masculinity is, and so that's really how I'd answer that question. I think there's some basic things that have never changed. I think in ancient Greece, I think that you could have said, is being a man the same as being strong and courageous? And the answer would have been yes to most people. I don't think that has changed a whole lot.
Because when I was growing up, I loved, sort of ancient Rome, Sparta, ancient Greece, these sort of things, and there was always the strong, dominant men, and that's really kind of not acceptable now. It's like you were mentioning with the TV programs, that kind of character is always the dumb jock or the idiot who can't figure things out. When you were growing up, or from your research, are there certain people that you look to as role models of true masculine energy?
Well, I think, most of history is full of men, with true masculine energy. Really, at least because you don't hear about the losers in history, right? You just hear about the winners. So you have a lot of guys actually who are winning. I have always, and I gave a copy of this poem to my nephews actually this year, that Rudyard Kipling poem, If, I think which is really more about leadership as much as masculinity, but it's really fantastic poem. And I think that really captures a lot, and it communicates a lot to most people about what I think they have always believed that being a man is. And other than that, obviously, you have the great military cultures tend to be the ones that you can pull the most from, like you said, Sparta and Rome and Greece and Germany and there's cultures in which men were forced to be strong and expected to be strong. I obviously have that ethos built in. And so you can pull from so much of that. I also enjoyed the writing of Jack London, for that reason. And that was actually one of the things that got me started down this path. The way he talks about kind of masculinity, and the way I think that Jack London talks about the problem that modern men have. Kind of his characters often tend to be, especially in my favorite book, The Sea Wolf, his characters tend to be this man who's, man of letters, this man who's been very sheltered and very civilized, getting pushed into a situation where none of that matters, and where he has to struggle to survive like his ancestors did, and has to deal with hard situations and hard judgments, and force himself to kind of become a stronger person and a stronger man. And I think that those kind of situations can, kind of answer a lot of the questions that we have personally, I think, as men living in the modern world who aren't in hard situations all the time.
And I mean, that's something I loved about your stuff, was that you're actually addressing who we are, where we fit in the world, our tribes, that sort of thing, because I see so many guys who are just lost. Like, I was like that myself. I felt like I was a good person, but I wasn't a good man. I didn't seem to fit into the stereotypical, what we consider manly nowadays. Do you think that's where modern men struggle? We don't have rites of passage. We don't have clearly defined boundaries between childhood to, because of like such an easy life, technology, abundance of food, and that sort of thing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in many cases, they're actually encouraged not to become masculine, and they're told that masculinity is bad, and that becoming a man isn't a thing. It's just that it's just a fake, imaginary thing, and if that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you believe that, it's actually true. But I think that we all deal with that reality of that the world is not inclined to push us to be more masculine. So I think that one of the things I've been talking about and writing about my new book is that that is a choice. And if you decide that being masculine is something that's important to you, that's your value, and you can't expect affirmation from the rest of the world from it. But you can still push yourself to be as masculine as you can be within the parameters that are allowed to you, basically, by society, which is unfortunate that there aren't a lot of parameters. There isn't a lot of room for masculine men in society, but you can't expect society to think about things the way you do. That's always a failing answer, I think, in life, is that waiting for society to approve of whatever you do.
And that's the thing, is we look to other people for permission to do what we want in life. It's like or do what's acceptable, and sadly nowadays it seems to be watching garbage TV, drinking yourself into stupors, taking drugs to hide the pain. So how can we recreate these kind of rituals? You hear these tribesmen who have to go into the jungle and hunt a certain thing, or they have to go away by themselves. There's all these kind of what we see as out there, rituals to manhood. How can we recreate that in our flashy lives? How can we become men again?
Well, there's kind of an organic way that you can do that in terms of, which is not decisive. The thing about ritual is that it's decisive. That kind of initiation is decisive. You start at one side and you end on the other side. And with most people are not going to be able to find that. So what you have to do really is push yourself into situations that you're uncomfortable with, and slowly you do become more confident in your own way from doing that. Whether it's like taking martial arts and getting punched in the face a lot, or pushing yourself to compete in something you weren't really comfortable doing. That kind of stuff. Going out and kind of making different kinds of friends than maybe you have, people who aren't going to necessarily support your weakness and are only going to be impressed by your strength. Those kinds of things, you can kind of have your own initiation in that way. But I think a real initiation really comes from a tribe or a group of people, really an honor group. And so you need that honor group. You need a bunch of other people who are aligned on the same values to really make that transformation happen. And then, as they accept you into their group, or if you're creating your own group, then you have to set that up. You have to have a barrier for entry to people. So on the other side of this group, on the other side of this initiation, you are outside, and now you're part of us. And here are our values, and you have to work to show those values to get to the inside. And I think that that's something that you have to go through, and a lot of us have to go through it as adults. I mean, people do it in like fraternities and things like that, but I think those, as much as they say they're forever, I think they're very temporary. It seems like for most people, they join a fraternity in college, and then, if they just have a drinking buddy who is in the same fraternity every so often for the rest of their lives, it's not like I don't think it's not a complete tribe in the way that they're completely committed to each other forever. Yeah. But they do have those kind of initiatory experiences for people that they can still go through. But I think that you really need, a really solid group of people who are really on the same page to kind of put you through, to kind of haze you a little bit. And I don't like hazing in the sense of I personally, I'm not into the let's be ridiculous for the sake of being ridiculous, and let's just make fun of somebody. Let's just I'm not really into that. That personally, I don't like the embarrassing people as part of a process. I like intentional processes in which they're forced to confront their own weakness. I think is much more useful personally.
Yeah, I mean, and how can you give an example of how you created your tribe? Because if you go onto your Instagram, for example, you have these rituals, you have these amazing visuals. There's so much change and brotherhood, and there's a bond there. Can you go into an example of how you found these sort of people? How can guys listening start try to find that kind of friendship in their life to really become who they should be?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard to start from scratch. I did not create my own tribe. I joined one. And then, started building my own chapter after I was already a member of another tribe. So when I went and found out the group that I'm part of, the Wolves of Inland, that was something because I felt strongly that, like everything that we're saying, I felt like I needed that kind of tribe and I needed that kind of experience, and that I think that it was important for my development as a man, but also because I just thought it was what was right. And so. I sought that out. And I obviously as time goes on, there's always a discussion of how you create those rituals, because it's going to be different for every group. It depends what your values are as to what, and that's an ongoing discussion, because you're not receiving these values from tradition necessarily. Because if you were, then we wouldn't have this discussion. They'd already be in place. So no matter, because I have guys who are really into Christianity, and they have their own kind of initiation rituals that have to do with their religion and their values. And, obviously what I do is a little bit different. And that, is an ongoing discussion that I have with all of my brothers involved. What do we want from the next guy? What do we want? What do we want them to have to experience? What do we want them to have to go through? What is really going to take this particular person to the next place that they need to go? Because I think our tribe specifically is very oriented in that way. It's not about just, like I said, hazing something to keep as a barrier to entry so much as it is to we also want you to continue to get better as you're in the tribe, and you always trying to become better. And so the whole idea is what hurdle does this person need to go through, because it's different for every person. I think I think if you're dealing with 17-year-old boys, and initiating them into something, in the old in the way that they used to with old private schools and stuff in England and all that kind of stuff. These secret societies and so forth. If you're doing that kind of initiation, you're always dealing with the same guy, a very similar guy at a very, very similar place in life. But if you're initiating someone who's 30 or someone who's 18, they have a whole different range of experiences that they have, and then you have to kind of process them differently, and because they have a different place that they need to get to. And sometimes you have to process them the same, because sometimes that's a cool experience too. But I think that everyone needs something different, because everybody comes from a different place in modern life, because everything is voluntary.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that. You very rarely see that kind of approach, the different challenge to bring in the different person. It's usually the same thing. It's, like for a sports team, for example, it's sing a song in front of the rest of them, or these silly like dress in like as a Disney princess and come out drinking with the lads for like a rugby player and all these kind of silly hazing, but there's nothing designed towards the person, their experiences, what they're seeking, what the group needs. So could we replace this with a sports team? Can we join a team or a group to get that? Or should we look to build our own, like you did, like our own faction or tribe or chapter?
Well, a sports team is just about sports, right? So, I mean, that's the thing is it's just about sports. And if it's about something else, then why not make it about something else? You can obviously people do get a lot of brotherhood and so forth from being involved in sports things. And I think in other countries, they do that into adulthood more than they do in America. In America, you're done with sports basically once you've been through college for most people. And most people it's high school. I understand in some other countries they have more like adult leagues and things like that, but that's pretty rare in America. People just start working and having their families and that's it. And they don't really have a lot of man time, which is a huge problem. But I do think when it comes to sports, a lot of times that's the problem is it's just about sports. And there's not necessarily there's that inclusiveness again, and I think you have to have a bunch of people who share the same values as well, and the values have to be more than sports. I think at the end of the day, I think if you're all really about something, you all really care about something, they have to be more than just sports. And I think that's when you have problems with like people from very different backgrounds and very different ideas of what is good in life. And so I think that it's more important to find some kind of other thing to center around aside from whether that be just a selection of values or being like a religious thing whatever, but I do think that there has to be kind of a higher purpose I think involved than just sports. And the other thing about sports is in many cases a lot of people talk about they have their tribe like at their CrossFit gym or whatever, and I'm like that tribe costs you $120 a month, and when you stop paying you are no longer a part of that tribe, so it's not a really good tribe. That is a commercial endeavor, like that's the commercial. That's a marketing thing. Your tribe. I mean, like obviously, lots of tribes have dues and things like that, and obviously, if you don't pay them, you're in trouble. But I think that a lot of these things are really just commercial activities that they're making feel like a tribe. But at the end of the day, as soon as you stop going, you're no longer part of the tribe. So it's I think a real tribe of people lasts longer than that. Like it's a whole life endeavor.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely something you see more of now. It's like, oh, I'm part of this CrossFit tribe. I'm part of this like group because I pay £10 a month towards it. But you're not really part of it. You're paying to be part of it. You're not earning your dues from it. So from your research of the books and history and that, have you noticed that these characteristics that you define in the book, are they the same across the world? Does masculinity or the opinion of it or what makes you a good man change like in Asia compared to Australia or Britain, or are the characteristics the same for all men?
I do think that's why I tried to keep it really simple, because I think the simple core is always true. But I do think obviously there are a lot of cultural details that change from place to place. In terms of an example I always use is like a kilt is just a dress in America. It's not
anything.
It's not. It's like they're not. But the reason why men wear kilts in Scotland is because for a specific reason. Mm-hmm. And so it's not. It's part of their culture and it's part of their masculine culture. And but it doesn't transfer. If you put on a kilt in America, you're just looking for attention. That's kind of my feeling about it anyway. But but in a cultural context, it makes a lot of sense. And it's the same thing is true with a lot of details. I mean, obviously you have, like guys wear like big robes and stuff in other countries, or like, basically, again, like basically, like robes or whatever in other countries where we would not wear that. But obviously their idea of masculinity is actually probably pretty much the same. The only thing that you run into confusion, I think, when you get to people to talk about like isolated groups and matriarchal cultures, which aren't never really matriarchal. They're usually just defeated. And like they're like, they've become matriarchal. Well, no, you just defeated all their male gods. But there's a lot of cultures out there in the world that where you like priest cultures, for instance, like which is a culture inside a culture, really. Like when you talk about priests or monks, then their idea of what masculinity is might be somewhat different. But I think if you look at the mainstream of that culture, and the average man is going to have a very similar idea about what masculinity is to what the things that I'm talking about. Like I said, I think that the Chinese would also like to think that their men are strong. I mean, that seems reasonable. Obviously, there are other values that we have other values too. But in terms of is being a man still about being strong and courageous? I don't know. There are a lot of martial arts movies that make it seem like they care about that. So, it's the same way. It's the same way, I think, all around the world. I think the mainstream, of culture and the average man is still going to think that masculinity has to do with, strength and courage, because it's part of him. I mean, we've evolved very much the same way throughout history, all of us. Obviously there have been different, branches of that. But, a lot of it's the same thing. There's still been wars throughout history in all these places, and men have had to like be strong throughout history in all these places. And so those things I don't think have changed a lot. I mean, they're changing in the way that people talk about them, like I said, in the mainstream media. But the people who control the media are not average people. Like in America, the people who write for a lot of these magazines and who the newspapers and the headlines that you see, I mean, they're very specific group of people who went to specific schools. They live in New York City or LA. They don't have an average American experience. They don't, they are really in those places many times because they hate the average American experience. So they have a very specific agenda and a very weird skew on reality. I don't think most people are as concerned about, gender equality really as you would be led to believe by the news.
Yeah, I mean, that was something I was going to ask you about was, say if you go to a bookstore, magazine rack, what's your opinion of the way masculinity is portrayed in like Men's Health, GQ, these sorts of things? Do you see a kind of a slant in the way it's portrayed? Do you see a kind of, does it irritate you the way it's it's like you must have a £200 t-shirt, you must have this boots, you must have these kind of set characteristics, or do you think it's been warped, the approach, like what we should be as men, like the way the media portrays it?
Well, there's two different things there. In terms of like I would say magazine racks, I don't know how those things are still in business at all. But just in terms of who sits down and reads magazines anymore, I don't think as many. Only when you're on in the airport or at a doctor's office or something. But I don't think a lot of people get them anymore. So I always wonder how they exist. But because people read most of their news online, and I think that's actually poisoned a lot of what you see in men's magazines and so forth. I mean, they really are absolutely, and this is so sad. Absolutely, there's no difference between them and like BuzzFeed, like the kind of content that you're going to see, the opinions you're going to see. So you'll see these really anti-masculinity things in men's magazines. Really, I mean, like whether it's, I mean, I've seen horrible things, like ridiculous feminist stuff written in like Playboy. And, it's just amazing to me that stuff that men will sit and read that, or that maybe they're not reading it. And they're flipping through it, looking for the top 10 ways to like improve your pecs. And if so, good on them. But, I still feel like you're getting this very weird perspective again from the same group of people. Cause it's like these, liberal writers in New York and LA or in London or whatever. And, they have a very specific skew on what they're writing, and they have and they're trying to compete with BuzzFeed, and so they're going to create some kind of article that says something sensational that a lot of people disagree with, and then they'll get a lot of traffic, and then they get a lot of clicks, and they make more money. And so it's just this kind of garbage culture that perpetuates itself. But in terms of consumerism, which was kind of the other aspect of your question, yeah, obviously, I mean, men who don't know what masculinity is are more subject to being manipulated in terms of what they think they need to be masculine. What does a man look like? What does a man wear? I think there are actually good answers to those questions. Actually, you can actually a buddy of mine named Tanner Guzzi wrote a book recently called The Appearance of Power. And if you actually understand what masculinity is, then you can actually look at, well, is this about is this communicating what I want to communicate with my clothing? Is the inner me projecting, outwardly effectively? And I think that's an interesting question. But as far as like trends and fashion, I mean, that's just disposable culture. I mean, the fashion industry is based on throwing away things that you said were amazing last year. It's kind of a ridiculous culture. But, in terms of creating things that are nice, I don't think it's terrible to have or want or be advertised nice things. I like nice things. But at the same time, I think that you have to be able to separate that from, does this $65 pair of shorts that I just bought make me a man? Well, no, they don't have anything to do with it, but at the same time, I don't think those things are innately evil. I just think that you have to be able to process that information better, which is why I think it's important to understand what masculinity actually is.
No, it's great that you mentioned Tanner. I've actually interviewed him as well.
Okay.
And I loved his message as well. It's, the thing of it's not the clothes, it's the image, it's portraying you like the person. And that's why I loved your stuff, was the more I read it, the more I understood it, the deeper I could get into it, and I could understand a lot more of it. Before it was difficult for me because I came from a place where you were taught, not to be rough, not to be physical, to fit in, not to speak out when things are happening, and that made me shy, nervous. I got bullied and things like that. How do we grade masculinity? What would you, for those people who think men are just born masculine or not? People who say, "Oh, I'm gay," and they're, can they be masculine? There's these kind of silly kind of conceptions about things, about masculinity. Can we always, develop as a person? Are you masculine or not? Are there grades? How can we do this?
Yeah, no, actually, I mean, that's why I like actually having set characteristics that you can create. That's one of the projects of, I think, of writing The Way of Men, was to say, I feel like I can look at the design of a coffee mug and tell you whether it's masculine or not. I think I think that you can really look at things in the world and say, is that masculine or is that less masculine or feminine? It's like, what does this project? Is this like to me, a heavier glass is more masculine? But it's just, and you can argue about stuff like that because it's silly. But at the same time, in terms of men individually, obviously, we all get what we get genetically. You get, lucky you're 6'3" or maybe you're 5'3". Maybe you're naturally a little stronger, maybe you're naturally a little weaker. But we're all naturally weaker to begin with than we can be. And I think that that's an important thing to remember. It's like you get whatever you get masculinity wise. And obviously there's a spectrum. Like you said, there's a grade. And but to say, well, I'm not the most masculine guy in the room automatically by birth. And again, I don't even know how you would really know that. It's like, was the guy next to you like just raised more masculine? Like that's. But obviously there are going to be some things that are different between men, and you're eventually going to figure out where you're at, but you're never going to figure out where you're really at unless you try. And so, you can always strive to be, more masculine. You can always strive to be stronger, right? At a certain point, there's diminishing returns. Like I don't need to deadlift 700 pounds. I could probably, I could probably train up for that, but I'd have to devote X amount of things to my life to make that happen. And is that really a goal that I care about? Not really. So I'm good. But I've kind of gone up as high as I feel like that's a good spot for me. And the same thing is true of like a lot of things that are strength oriented. Like there is a place with diminishing returns. And the same thing is true of courage. It's like, well, do I have to show you how courageous I am every day? But at the same time, I have to always check myself to be like, am I not doing that because I'm uncomfortable? Or, should I push myself a little bit? And I joke about it, it's all the time. I have this saying like life is conflict, peace is death, that I put on things and whatever. And that's really popular with a lot of my readers. And, it's for me too. It's like there are times when I'm like, I just don't really feel like doing that. And I'm like, I guess I kind of have to, I'd be better if I did, and those are the things that you look at in life, be like, it would have been better if I would have pushed myself a little harder. And you want to have as few of those regrets, I think, as possible. I mean, you don't want to put yourself into situations where you're going to end up in jail for no reason and stuff like that. But at the same time, I think that you need to put yourself in a situation where you're going to face challenges and risk. And I think that makes you grow as a person. And whether that makes you the most masculine man who ever lived, probably not. But is it going to make you better and a better version of the best man that you can be? Absolutely. And I think that that's what your goal should always be. And why shouldn't it be that?
So what should these challenges contain? Do they need a sense of risk? Can they be done by yourself? Or, should you do it with somebody else? Should it be physical? Do you have things that you think, the challenge should contain X, Y, Z? Or is it just a case of whatever is pushing you, just the act of trying to become better is masculine?
Well, I think, you could try to become a better painter, but that's not necessarily about masculinity. So it's not just anything that you're not good at. You try better at it. I actually like painting, but and I'm pretty good at it, but that doesn't make me more masculine because I can or cannot do that. I think that the things that have to do with improving your masculinity specifically and living a more masculine life do have to include what I've called in the book the tactical virtues of strength, courage, mastery, and honor. And I do think that you have to, whereas for certain people they're going to be some aspect is going to be more important than another. If a guy's grown up in a bad neighborhood and he's been street fighting all his life, he probably doesn't need to challenge himself with courage constantly. He's probably there, but it's also good for him not to maybe relax on that completely. You still have to put yourself in situations you're uncomfortable with in that way. But at the same time, the guy who's never been in a fight, and I'm not advising that people go out and get in fights because there are huge legal repercussions for it. And it's not, unfortunately, it's not necessarily even an honorable situation anymore with most people because you don't know if someone's going to pull a knife on you. It's not like let's put up our dukes and settle this like men. Yeah. That's not real life anymore. So I don't really advocate for that. And also, I'm an old enough man that I think bar fighting is kind of dumb. But I guess it's cool when you're like 22. But I think that you do need to, if you've never been in that situation, I do think you have to put yourself in maybe controlled situations like that. I think that it's really good. It's really good to get punched. I really think it's a good thing. It's a good thing to know that you won't break. You might break a little, but you're not gonna die probably. It's a really good thing to watch people realize that okay, I can get punched a little bit. That's fine. I'm not going to die. I need to be able to deal with this. And then, I think, and the same thing goes with jujitsu and a lot of things that other people are into. It's a good thing to be able to have that competition with other men. And that's why I do really think that it needs to come with that. We're so poorly socialized as men. I think most of us, guys who grew up with a lot of brothers, that's awesome, but most people don't. And, I think that, I think men really need other men around them to push them. Like I said, they'll try harder. I mean, men are who are around other men, and it's biological. They will try harder if there are other men waiting there to shame them. They will be better because they have to be. Because no one wants to be the guy who sucks. So if you have any dignity or self-love at all, you're gonna at least try to. Even if you're the last guy, you want to try to be the guy who he was last, but he tried really hard. You at least want to do something. You at least want to put yourself out there, and I think that that's self-respect as a man. And I think that you have to put yourself in a situation where you can really have to deal with that on a regular basis. I think that's important for most men. I mean, whether it be, like I said, whether it be lifting, whether it be, I think physical things are very important because we lack them in modern life. I mean, that wouldn't have been the most important thing in a scenario where, you have to work on a farm all day and, fight with guys all the time. But, I think the modern world, that's what we're missing. So I think that it's important to access that part of who we are as a man, even if it's not necessary. I think because it just makes you better as a man.
I mean, I really agree with that because I grew up with an older brother who was a lot bigger than me for the first 20 odd years. I grew up with cousins, and you're wrestling, you're fighting, you're playing football and that. And then as I became like a grown up, shall we say,
okay,
you start working, you stop playing sports and stuff like that, so you lose that. And recently I've been doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu for the last 3 months.
Nice.
And it's made me feel more alive than I have in years. The people choking you out, the skills development, the realizing, like you said, that we're not going to break, that reincorporating the physicality of it. And, there's something about the band of a guy you saying, no, don't choke me like that, choke me like this, or that's how you do it, or somebody having to tap out because you're about to pass out.
Yeah.
Those are the things. And you come and, you want to hug the guy because he's reawoken you in a sense. It's a strange, I don't know how to describe it. It's a weird sensation.
Well, yeah, we need that. That's what men need. That's when they're happy. It's like when dogs play. They're wagging their tails while they're barking each other and fake fighting. This is what we need. This is what makes us happy. And I think that people who say that that's wrong are really trying to deny you something that is part of really your well-being. We need that. Now, it doesn't mean that I need to go out and randomly beat people up in the street and slash their throats. It means that you do need that male competition in your life. You do need that the need to push yourself. You need that pressure and that stimulus.
Because I suppose it creates that environment because we've got all the food we need, all the comforts and that. It allows us to get that side of us out in a controlled environment. I mean, I absolutely love it. And I've seen guys come of different cultures, different sizes, different starting points, and the change in them is just phenomenal. I mean, it's one of the best things I've ever done. But I also love the gym, the tearing through a sticking point to hit a new PR.
Yeah.
It's you walk about another foot taller because of it.
Yeah.
Why don't guys get this? Is the government, the society, do they not want us to be men? Surely they would want us to be better.
No, they don't. Why? Why? How do they benefit from us being awesome? I mean, they don't. They benefit from selling us shit. That's what they benefit from. They benefit from selling us stuff and from us sitting home and being behaved. They want to be weak and behaved in your house, in front of the television, buying things. That's the goal of government and corporations at the same time. That's all they want. Now, if they can sell you something that makes you feel strong, that's good, but they don't actually want you to be strong. That's not the goal. They're I would say that, and it's like a conspiracy. I just think that's it's just logical from a commercial perspective. I mean, you being stronger is about you, and what they want is your money. So it's your money and your obedience. is what the government and corporations want, and I think they're almost interchangeable, really. But and I think that for most people, I mean, and you're not going to get a lot of affirmation from anybody who is not doing the same thing you are. Anyone who doesn't want to be better like that is actually going to talk down to you and say that you're doing it because you're insecure. Well, they're secure with sitting on the couch watching TV, or just being completely weak and vulnerable and whatever, and that makes them feel okay because they're supposed to be that way, right? But I think that you won't get support or affirmation from people outside those circles, and that's okay. And I think that that's the big struggle for people, is that they want that affirmation, like, hey, I'm making myself better. Don't you think that's great? And people it draws other people's failures into sharper contrast. And so it's offensive to them. If you're becoming better and better and better, and they're becoming worse and worse and worse, they're going to find reasons to pick away at you. And you just have to ignore that and realize that the approval of people who are on the path in the same direction that you're going on is what really matters. And then you don't have to get mad at the people who aren't on that path. You can just kind of look down on them and disdainfully.
I mean, is it like that allergy or the allegory or whatever it's called, the crabs in a bucket?
Yes.
As they try to come out, they'll pull each other back in because
Yes.
they don't want the other one to go out. Yeah.
I love that one. Yeah, that's most people all the time. Yeah.
Because I noticed that nobody wants you to be different or improve or stand out. They'd rather bitch and moan at you, or rather than use you as an inspiration. They'd rather be jealous and sabotage and bitch about somebody who's going out and doing their own thing. I mean, I got some amount of flack from friends about the podcast when I started it, because I was different. I didn't want to go and sit in the same dingy pub and just drink the same shitty pints. Yeah.
Right.
Now it was seen as, oh, that's sad, oh, that's so boring, that's weird. Now it's taken over the world, podcasting,
Yeah.
So how do you think we have to adapt to suit? Because, society has changed a lot in the last 50 or so years. How can we deal with, that? I mean, equality has really happened a lot, and it's really improved society. Some things are not as male-dominated as they were, and it's the developing, women aren't just expected to be mothers and cooks and that, which is brilliant for society, but how do we as men have to adapt to these sort of changes?
Well, I mean, I think that one thing is there's a fine line between you can be too positive and you can be too negative. I think that there are some people who try so hard to be positive and so hard to imagine that everything is under their control that they like, you can go out and find a woman who will cook and clean for you, just like they did in the 1950s, or just like they've always been expected to, and you can have this exact life that you think you want. And I don't know that that's always true, or it's definitely not true for everybody, because the amount of, say, those women available to the men, is not equal. And so I think you have to be realistic about what's going on in the world and what's out there for you, but at the same time, you also don't want to be so negative that you become that you have resentment, really, that you're like, well, I can't be happy because the world isn't the way I want it to be. And that's also kind of a black hole that people go down once they realize that maybe they've been lied to a lot as they were growing up, and then they get in the negative situation, and then nothing will ever be good. And I think that you have to ride right in the middle of those two things, of right between realism and taking a realistic perspective on things, but also saying, hey, well, this is where the world is. Like, let me find the best way to be who I want to be, and to have the people in my life who are doing the things that I enjoy. And, how do I really have, the best life I can have, and the most masculine life I can have in this particular instance, and be the best version of myself that I can be, and recruit people who are also kind of on that same mission. And so, the role of women in society, whatever, I mean, it's changed in many ways, not for the better. And I don't think it's better for women in many cases either. They just kind of, pretend they're happy with it in one aspect and then complain about it in the other. But I think that you can't really let that control your life either. You have to just realize it is what it is and move forward and, try and have the best life you can have.
So would you say then that it's our duty to become the best men that we can be? Can we get to a point where we've gone too far masculine? Should we always maintain some sort of, I don't know, is it feminine traits or energy, or, how do we keep a healthy balance in all this to avoid becoming the stereotype jock and guy that...
The stereotype jock, keep in mind, is a fiction. To a certain extent, obviously we've met that guy. We've all met that guy. But the idea that if you do these things, you will become that guy, that's fictional. That you do not have to actually become dumber as you become more masculine. That is not a rule. You can still be just as smart as you always were and be masculine and smart. You can still be creative and be masculine. In fact, that's a lot of what I'm writing about now, is that, masculinity and creativity going together. You can still do, you don't have to, if you weren't a dick, you don't actually still have to become a dick. You can still be a reasonably decent guy.
I love that.
Yeah. There's no rule that says you have to go from maybe being a less masculine man to then becoming the dumb jock who you hated in high school, who probably isn't like that anymore either, although he might be, because sometimes they never really grow out of that. But I think that you look at all these great men in society who were like, great writers and explorers and warriors all at the same time. That's the goal, not this kind of like one-dimensional thing that's really just kind of a trope in teenage movies, But I think that I don't think it's your duty to anyone. I think that society it's not your duty to society, because society absolutely does not want that from you. They do not want you to become more masculine. That's 100%. They've decided that. Ask the UN. The United Nations does not want you to become more masculine. They've been very clear about that. The same as things that most governments and their health organizations and all that kind of stuff. They would prefer that you just, become more like a woman as fast as possible. But if you want to become, more masculine, I don't think it's your duty to society. I think it's your duty to yourself. If to be the best version of you that you can be, and that version, being a man, is what you are. You are a man, and if you can be the best version of being a man, that is better. And I think that is your duty to yourself. It's not your duty to anybody else. If you get in a group that demands that of you, that's great. Then it's your duty to them. But it's not your duty to like any kind of larger concern, because most people don't really want that. So it's your duty to yourself.
Because that's the thing. If I called this interview, Jack Donovan on how to become more of a man or something like that, it would bring up a lot of negative connotations in people, where we've seemed to be not brought up, but we're kind of pushed now into believing that it's a bad thing to become a man.
Well, they have daddy issues, that's all daddy issues is like if someone tells you to be more of a man, that there's so many people who have that trigger that's like, don't tell me what I have to do, man. There's so many people who get so riled up by that, like, don't tell me I'm not good enough. It's this teenage daddy issue thing that a lot of people have, and it's been reinforced because women will say that that's that you're being fake by being more masculine, because they don't understand what being a man is, because they can't, because they're women. So
do you see an issue with so many guys not, the guys are shirking their responsibilities as fathers, single parents and that now? Do you think, is it creating a problem in society that there isn't the father pass on traditional skills and what it is to be a man and that sort of thing?
Well, that's a two-way street. A lot of people want to blame men for that, because they don't want to blame women. In relationships, there's two people involved. And single mothers aren't saints. In a lot of cases, there's a reason why they're a single mother is because no one can put up with them. And and because they're incorrigible and they act like princesses and they have expectations that aren't realistic. And that's not always the case. Obviously, there are a lot of guys who are just jerks. And
there's people who come from single house families and they're some of the nicest people in the world, and then there's the exact opposite with a great family,
Yeah, it's 100% true. But I mean, I think that generally speaking, I can't see how it would be good for men or even most people to not have fathers around. Obviously, that's pretty shitty. I think having a good father figure is, and for women too. I find a lot of the most balanced women have had strong father figures. The most like self-assured and least hysterical and crazy women have had solid father figures. And I think that I think it's good for everybody, and everybody kind of loses by not having dads around. But at the same time, society is what it is, and you can't expect to have these like idyllic households that really came from a society that had completely different expectations and completely different access to safety nets like welfare or whatever and all these things. So it's you can't force men to pretend that they live in a fantasy world and stay with crazy women just to support children, but at the same time you can't it would be better, obviously.
So how do we as men make sure that we're good fathers, how we're giving good examples to our kids, or we're being great uncles for our nieces and nephews? How do we make sure that we're fixing the BS of today to make sure that the next generation are going to be the best they can be?
Well, I don't get into parenting because I'm not a parent. But I mean, obviously, I think that leadership is about leading by example, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I think that it's if you're actually the kind of guy who's worth looking up to, I think that that's a lot better father figure than a guy who isn't. So I really being the best version of yourself and pushing yourself and not being a victim and not being a whiner, and that has always been an inspiration to me. Like my own father, actually, he had polio when he was a kid, like very young. He got it right before they invented the vaccine, and so he's had a limp like his whole life, and so he's like technically handicapped. But because of that, one positive influence he's had on me throughout my whole life is that when people ask him what happened, he could play the victim role and then get a lot of oohs and ahs and like, oh, that's terrible, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, he tells people he was in a car accident. Because he doesn't want the sympathy, and he just wants to be a regular guy. And he just wants to be judged on his actions and not because he has some handicap or whatever. And so that's something that I really respected that came from my father. Is that no one wants to hear about it. I mean, actually, everybody wants to hear about your problems because then they can commiserate with you. But it doesn't have any value. I think it's much more impressive to be judged by your actions and what you've actually been able to make with your life despite your disadvantages. So
I mean, you have like such an amazing kind of way of looking at things, and your books are brilliant. I noticed some negative comments, shall we say, on some of the Amazon reviews, possibly by people who have not read them. For example, some guy said the attack on masculinity goes hand in hand with the worship of weakness. Do you agree with these sorts of things? I mean, what do you say to people who say, oh, but what about feminism? Oh, that's just guys being jerks. How do you deal with? Do you bother trying to show people what you're doing, or do you just go, well, that's their journey, I'm focusing on myself?
Well, I mean, when it comes to like negative Amazon reviews, I think I have like an obscene amount of reviews, just generally, and most of them are positive. But so I don't really worry too much about those anymore. I think when it first,
Well, that's what I did.
yeah,
That's what I did notice. You had so many more positives.
yeah,
But
yeah.
there was
I don't,
always the
and the thing, and there are people who just don't like obviously my message, and maybe probably, a lot of them haven't read anything. A lot of people. I mean, I had an instance recently where someone like was totally against me even being in the same room with them, and they've literally never read my work. They just heard that I was a bad person, and so like, I mean, people are hysterical and ridiculous, and so you can't really give that too much credit. And I mean, obviously there are legitimate criticisms of my work, although I think I've thought of most of them already. That people often think they're telling me something I haven't thought of, and no, I have. In many cases, I mean, I did a lot of reading on feminism before I started writing about masculinity. And so I know what they have to say. I already know. They're not going to tell me anything that I haven't heard before. And so I came to my conclusions knowingly, and not just because, like I heard that from my grandpa or something. And so I don't worry too much about that. And I think it comes back to what we've been talking about throughout the show, is that, you can't expect affirmation for people who aren't on the same mission. And obviously there are going to be people who feel better. It makes them feel better if everybody around them is weak, so they want that. And it makes them feel, if they challenge themselves, then they have the possibility of failing, and most people aren't comfortable with that, And so I don't. I mean, obviously there are, tons of criticisms that all of us, some people can make out of any of us, but you have to, I think, really, just focus that out. Put that out of focus, because what matters is the people who really get what you're doing. And, when they have something to say, like, oh, I wish you would have said this, or, I mean, that's who I want to listen to. When someone who likes 90% of what I'm saying and said, have you ever thought of this? That's the guy I want to talk to. I don't want to talk to some guy who read a headline about me and decided to write a negative review or something. Those people's opinions don't matter.
I mean, so how do you overcome, if you're a guy listening, how do you overcome jealousy, bitching, these kind of things? How can we maintain the mental strength to focus on our own journey, that, to understand that it is okay to want to become a better guy, that it's not a bad thing, that it's not, you're not a jerk for wanting to go on this kind of path of discovery and become more masculine?
Well, I mean, it's about self-awareness, really. I mean, you have to be self-aware. Do you think you're a jerk? I mean, do you think it's right? That's the question that you need to ask. Someone else says you're a jerk. Am I a jerk because someone else thought I'm a jerk, or am I being a jerk? Because you could legitimately being a jerk. I mean, I think I always have to ask myself, am I behaving the way I want to behave? Am I being true to, especially as a writer? I mean, I've written down what I believe. If I'm not doing it, I'm kind of a shitty person. So, I mean, I try to the best, within reason, to the best of my ability, do the things that I have put out there that I think other men should do. And I think, if you say you believe in something, you have to continually, and it's an everyday process of measure your actions against your beliefs. And, am I being consistent? Am I showing integrity in what I'm doing? And I think that, as long as you're doing that, I think that's how you deal with all that, outside disapproval and also just, self-questioning. I think that you, as long as you're, am I still being consistent? I think is the question you have to ask yourself. Is this what I want? Is this what I actually believe? And am I being consistent with that?
And is that a way to measure success? Is that how you know you're developing, that you can say 3 times out of 5, yes, I am? Then the next month, maybe you could say 4 times out of 5, or, what kind of ways can you say I'm developing? What should we look for as we're going along the path for, are there signs? Is it just an internal self-awareness feeling, or do we start seeing changes in our own lives? Was there something in that mimics the journey that you went on? Do we start seeing the way people treat us better, or... Do you know what I mean? Is there signs, external or internal, that we should look out for on our journey to know we're getting better?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of that's measurable. I mean, you can tell when you're getting better at something. I mean, obviously, like if you're lifting weights, you tell when you get better. You get stronger. But I mean, I think that the really exciting thing that happens, there are two things, and maybe you don't always get one. I kind of do, which is neat. I'm kind of at a place where I am kind of who I always wanted to be, and maybe better, which is great. It's a neat thing. Now, could I become even better? Well, sure. Not that I'm just not saying that I'm the best. I'm just saying, like, in terms of what I expected for myself in my life, have I gotten to that place? Am I self-actualized? And I would say to a certain degree, yeah. And that's really satisfying. I mean, but I'm not done. So I'm going to keep pushing myself to be better because, of course, I always can be. And, the billions of guys, millions of dudes are better than me. And at any given thing that I like to do and would like to get better at. But at the same token, the other thing is like when you surprise yourself. And that's the most exciting thing, I think. When you become good at something that you didn't think you could get good at. Or that you finally start to believe in yourself. And not just push yourself to believe in yourself, because that's a different thing. But I happened with my assistant, and it's really one of my best friends, and he's a younger guy, and we've been doing boxing and stuff like that, and I could see it's like 3 weeks ago, the switch flipped from I really want to get good at this to like I think I can be good at this. And he started to like believe in himself, and that was the fucking coolest thing to see in the world, and it was so exciting.
Because I think I'm on that journey just now. That moment of I want to get better. I'm seeing it gradually improving, but there's still so much to do, and that's part of the fun. There's so many things you can change. I love the kind of the message you're putting out. I mean, we've been talking now for over an hour, like an hour and 5 minutes, and it literally feels like 10 minutes. And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface from this. But, I appreciate you're really busy. But what do you want people listening to this to take? Is there an overarching message that somebody listening should remember, or a mantra, or a focus for the next year or so, or what would you want somebody listening to go and do, or to listen or focus on?
I mean, I think, it just comes back to what we've been saying, about the challenging yourself and putting yourself, trying to be, if there's an ideal version of yourself that you're trying to become, why aren't you taking steps to make that happen? And that's going to involve you challenging yourself and pushing yourself harder and going out and finding other men, who will push you. And, if you get to a year from now and you haven't become more like that guy that you want to be, you're doing it wrong.
So is it an unusual fact? I mean, I love asking guys about this, but I normally say, what's an unusual fact about yourself that anyone hearing it would be glad they waited till here? I mean, what's, for you, I would say, what's the least masculine thing about you? Are you feminine in any way? Do you have a leaning towards like a particular feminist thing, or what's an unusual thing about you that people would go, wow?
Well, I sure as hell wouldn't tell you. I'd be keep it secret, keep it safe.
I'm trying to think. Was there a way I could say that? I was thinking I'm probably just going waffling even more here.
No. I mean, I'm not a really big fan of people like, because it's a very hipsterish thing to do. Kind of laugh. I mean, I laugh at myself, and my close friends know that there are things that I do that they're like, I can't believe he does that. But at the same time, I mean, I think projecting that to the world, I mean, you're just there's that Facebook culture of like, isn't it funny that I'm a failure, or isn't it funny that I'm goofy in this way? And I don't know. I'm just not, like when we talk about the stuff I put out there, I'm like, only victory. Yeah, and there's some things too. I mean, I would say that like as an older, as someone who I felt like has proven some things in my life, like I allow myself things like I'm not worried about this. I enjoy this. This is fine. I don't care. I mean, because people have all their, they're all their little weird cultural things that they think are masculine or not. It's like I don't drink whiskey. I drink vodka. I will drink whiskey if I have to, but I'm a vodka guy. And there's certain things. It's just like like I'm a great cook. People would say it's feminine. I'd say the best cooks are actually men. So whatever. But I know how to. I like cooking fancy food. I don't do it very often because I'm on a very strict diet all the time. But I'll cook some impressive shit. And tons of little things in life. I went to art school, so I'm a pretty artsy guy. So I think that you don't go out and tell people about the really embarrassing song that you like in the world. You just keep it to yourself.
Oh, if you've seen my iPod, you'd be shocked. But I think that's the thing. You can make anything your own, so that becomes masculine because you're being yourself. I have to tell you, when I first started seeing your stuff, I felt like, I don't know, was I maybe just in that mindset of like, oh, this guy's a jerk, and look at this manly stuff. But as I developed myself, and I actually was open to it, and I realized the message you're putting out isn't just about, oh, guys. Yeah, you are actually, there's a lot behind it, and there's a lot more to than the stupid headlines that you sometimes see in the negative press.
Yeah.
And that you're changing lives for the better, and it's amazing. And you're trying to just bring us back into it, and you're not trying to make us like women have their place in the kitchen. You're not going down that road again. You're just making men better, and it's an amazing mission that you're doing. I could talk to you literally for another couple of hours. I'm enjoying this so much, but how can people keep in touch? How can we buy your books, find out about your latest projects? How can guys get in touch? And is it Wolfgang? Am I saying that right?
Wolfgang?
Yeah, I mean, how can we become part of your chapter? Do you offer that kind of service? Do you coach? What can we do to keep in touch with you?
No, I don't do any really coaching and things. I feel like by the time I've written that much, I should be writing a book or something, But I try not to get into long conversations telling people how to live their lives. If I have something to say, I'll write about it. And so in terms of obviously my website is jack-donovan.com. Websites are kind of business cards now, so I don't put as much content on there as I used to. But you can get to my books through there and see kind of the latest news, and I have mailing lists and things you can sign up for. Eventually, I think I'll probably do a subscription service, so I get to do more fun things than you can put on social media. But that's probably 6 to 8 months down the road. The most fun I have on social media is my Instagram. It's at Start the World, and that is kind of I think images are really powerful, and a really powerful way to inspire people, and it gives me a way to kind of put things out there in the world without writing a whole essay or whatever right now, so I can work on my book. So I really enjoy that, and obviously have a kind of clothing line that goes along with that I work on as well. So all that comes through Instagram. That's at Start the World, and my company at Brutal Company. So that's really the main things. I don't really use Facebook because I just feel like it's more people bitching at each other than I can handle. But anyway, so those are the main sources I think that people can follow what I'm doing at.
I mean, that's. Your Instagram, for example, your images and just the short messages really makes you think. And if you're open to development and being better and finding the real masculine self, I think your stuff is amazing, and it's definitely something everybody should follow. I really cannot say thank you enough for this. You've made me a true fan, because at the start I was like, I was kind of into it. I understood it. And now that I see the message behind it, and I think it's something that a lot of guys need to know.
Yeah.
It's something that we've lost in society, and it's not a bad thing. We need to rediscover it.
Yeah.
The floor is open to you. Is there anything you'd like to mention? Have you got any upcoming events? When can we expect the new book, etc.?
I mean, not really. There's like I said, Instagram is kind of my main thing, and I'm always looking for more followers on there, and who are interested in what I'm doing. And then obviously, I am working on a book. I think it'll come out in the middle or the end of this year. I was working on it today a little bit. And kind of a sketch for the book, I would say, is a speech that I recently delivered in Orlando for something called 21 University. And so I think if you go to 21 University or 21studios.com, or just go to my website, and I think it's the first blog post that I have there in my journal section of my website. There's a link to this 21 Studios that put a lot of content out for men and self-improvement for men. And there's a speech, an hour-long speech I gave recently that I'm pretty proud of. So that's been out just recently. So you have to kind of sign up for their trial to see it. But then if you don't like their site, you don't have to stay on there. But I'm really kind of excited about that speech, and it's about nobility and masculinity and Nietzsche, and it's one of the better things I've done. So.
Well, I'll definitely be including a link to it. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. You know, you're changing lives, and I can't thank you enough for taking part. I'll send you the links, etc., when it's ready. And I truly mean it. You really should be proud of what you're doing. It's amazing. I'd love to have you on again, because there's so many things I want to focus on, and I think we just scratched the surface today. I hope it's been as enjoyable for you as it has for me.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
I'd just like to say a massive thanks to Jack there. His interview was great, illuminating, and it certainly opened my eye to look at things in a different light. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to support us, please take 5 minutes and go onto iTunes and leave a review. Every review keeps me motivated, keeps me passionate, and it helps me attract future guests and a bigger audience to keep developing this podcast for you, the listener.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.